Dinosaur, written by Stephen Llewelyn and performed by Chris Barrie. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell to keep up to date with the latest installments.
Chapter 13. It Shouldn't Happen to a Vet. Dr. Patel and Mother Sarah seated themselves around the conference table. "Thank you for coming," said Baines. The captain was keen for this meeting to go forward, even though he couldn't attend personally. "Have you heard from the shuttle yet?" asked Sarah. "No comm traffic, but I'm keeping a close eye on them with the ship's sensors." She waved a hand over the tabletop, and a screen popped up. Swiveling it so that Patel and Sarah could see, she pointed out the icon representing the shuttle. It travelled across a simplistic, virtual simulacrum of the lands outside the New World. They were fascinated by the way the area around the shuttle was fleshed out on the fly, becoming highly detailed before their eyes. "Wow!" said Sarah. "I've never seen that before." The shuttle is processing the results of the survey as it gathers them and sending back full telemetry. The scanning computers, which I'm happy to say are far more sophisticated than the New World's core system, are building an electronic model of the world around us. Look. She tapped an area on the touchscreen in the wake of the shuttle. A second window opened, listing soil and geological compositions alongside types and disposition of flora and fauna. Photographic records were also appended, supporting each element of the survey. Baines tapped a link to activate a brief video, which showed a small group of sauropod younglings through a gap in the forest canopy. Hidden away in their little creche among the trees, they lived within a brief envelope of security. Already aloof to the diminutive predators of the forest, they were, for now, still small enough themselves to hide from the huge killers prowling the plains. "That's truly amazing," Sarah added, still lost in wonder. Patel watched the readings scroll up the screen with the eye of a scientist, but even he couldn't help but marvel at the lost world opening up before them. "Quite," said Baines in a slightly miffed tone. "I'm sure they're like little boys in a toy shop out there, but if I could return you to our agenda, I think it will become apparent why the captain wanted this meeting to continue in his absence." "Are you intimating that our illustrious captain wanted to dodge this meeting?" asked Patel. "I would never." Baines's outrage was entirely unconvincing. The councillors laughed. "I wondered why he'd insisted this morning's meeting be kept so short. We barely discussed the highlights of Lloyd's confession," Sarah admitted. "Now I begin to see." "Indeed," Baines acknowledged. "Right, here we go. Given our situation, we'll all need to draw from ship supplies for food, drink, etc. Obviously, money is no good here, and as we need all the help we can get, everyone will have to work, too. Especially when we begin farming for our subsistence once the defense perimeter is complete. The captain thought that some kind of work-related token system might be the way forward. These tokens, earned by labor, will allow us to buy the things we need whilst making sure we all do our bit." Patel whistled softly. "Captain Douglas is flying around in a space shuttle looking at dinosaurs, and we have to develop a fiscal strategy?" "That's about the size of it, yes," Baines agreed sulkily. "What do you think?" "I think," Patel replied slowly, "that I have always admired the captain's skill as an organizer, but now I am in awe of him." "Welcome to my world," said Baines. "But I don't know anything about economics," interrupted Sarah, slightly taken aback. Baines linked her fingers and twiddled her thumbs. "That is kind of the point," she said. "James doesn't want greed and corruption to take over our lives here as it did back home. There just aren't enough of us to carry any deadwood. He wants a system that is simple, obvious, and fair for all." "What if someone can't work, due to injury or illness, perhaps?" asked Sarah. "Do we let them starve?" Baines laughed. "Is that the viewpoint of the modern church, Sarah? How delightfully Dickensian. No, our numbers are so small that any special cases can easily be remedied, I'm sure. It's a start anyway. If it needs to become more sophisticated later, well, we'll just have to cross that headache when the beer runs out. She smiled at the councillors. Patel and Fellows looked at one another, Patel asking, "And just who was James going to nominate to explain this new currency to Mr. Bernstein? Do you think he will be happy to earn food tokens by cleaning, what does that most eloquent Captain Gleason call them, the dunnies?" Baines suddenly brightened. "I hadn't considered that. But now you come to mention it, I can't imagine anyone more suited to a new career in public convenience." "I don't wish to speak out of turn, Jill," Sarah cut in, almost apologetically, "but I think dear Jim Miller may be about to have a few problems at home, too, if this is going to be the new way." "Well, at least he'll get advance warning, Sarah. He'll be in charge of making the tokens." For the sake of professionalism, they tried not to smirk at the idea of Mr. Bernstein and Mrs. Miller being introduced to the concepts of physical labour and rationing. "Everyone will have to work," stated Patel more seriously. "We won't be able to carry anyone who is capable of contributing but won't. Even the children will have to help. We'll need absolutely every able body if we're to get through this. It will be like going back, or forward, I should say, to the Neolithic or the Bronze Age, with everyone doing their bit for the group." "Child labour too?" asked Baines in mock surprise. "The good old days," Patel quirked a half-smile. "Are you one of those unreconstructed females who rose to dominance in the mid-21st century, Commander?" "Poor, you should have met my mother." Baines' eyes twinkled. "My dad was frightened to argue with her. No wonder he spent so much of his time back home moonwalking." "You've never mentioned your parents, Jill. Do they still live on the moon? I've always wanted to visit but never got around to it. I bet it's romantic, huh?" asked Sarah. "The views are beyond description, Sarah. The earth hanging in the sky." She smiled in remembrance. "Maybe we could take a shuttle one day and I'll show you. The moon is still there, after all. Here we are in your home 100 million years ago. I'd love to see mine, too. See how it's changed, you know? My father's American and was an early settler on the moon-based New Florida. He met my mother while visiting relatives in England. After queuing for what seemed like an age for a loaf of bread, that's what the British have always done, apparently, according to Mum, a rather attractive young woman also stranded in line caught his eye. Anyway, they got to talking, and Dad explained how he lived on New Florida, and my mum asked if that was the base named after the location of a medieval monastery in mid-Wales. Blissfully unaware that he'd been reeled in, because so many U.S. place names are transplanted from Britain, Dad set about explaining that Florida was actually a state in America. Apparently, his reward had been a mocking grin. Patel's eyes began to glaze over, so he rubbed his left temple in an attempt to revive himself while Mother Sarah encouraged Baines to continue. They began a long-distance relationship, but that wasn't good enough for my mother. Oh, no. She moved to the moon to keep an eye on him. Then little me came along, the first loony. Dad has always told me how dismayed he was that I inherited Mum's mocking grin. I've simply no idea what he could possibly mean. She grinned to the contrary. Sarah chuckled. With all we've been through, any kind of a grin is most welcome. Yes, said Baines, thinking wistfully of home. With a resigned sigh, she continued. But unfortunately, the next item on our agenda is less of a laughing matter, I'm afraid. Oh, good, said Patel, without thinking. Clearing his throat awkwardly, he added, I mean, good. It's good that we're getting to the heart of the matter. You were saying, Commander. His faux pas was greeted with silence. Right, said Baines evenly. Next on the list is Lieutenant Lloyd and what's to be done with him now that he's confessed. They brooded for a little while. What are our options? Asked Patel eventually. Baines took a moment before replying. They all seem rather prosaic to me. Some people are vying for execution or exile, which amounts to the same thing, really. Some advocate imprisonment, and others, if not many, have even suggested reformation and reintegration. She took a sip of her coffee. All these opinions seem overly simplistic, lacking any detail. As for reformation, where on earth would you start with that in our situation? And who would want to work themselves ragged to keep him fed and watered in a comfy cell while he reforms? Sarah tugged at her ear in discomfiture.
The other thing is the little matter of a fair trial. This also needs to be discussed, and that said, perhaps we shouldn't really be exploring the sentence before it's even taken place.
Baines looked surprised. A trial? Fair?
Of course. Surely we need to hold one,
replied Sarah reasonably.
A public one, too, I would suggest. After all, we've all been landed here against our will.
Baines was taken still further aback. Public? She spluttered, eyes widening. And just how are we meant to set that up? She asked finally.
Well, I've spent quite a bit of time reading up on everyone's files over the last few days,
replied Sarah.
I think it's important to know as much as possible about everyone in order to represent their needs as a counselor. I see it as my mission, no pun intended, to know everyone, because Satnam and James are so busy with their other duties. One thing I can tell you is that we have 2 people on board with legal experience.
And who might they be? Baines was not thrilled by this new direction.
There's a lady,
Sarah continued,
one of the paid seats, if you will, not that any of that matters anymore, who used to be a defense attorney back in Seattle. Her name is Liz Barton Fraley, Fraley being her maiden name. Her husband's name is Dick.
Baines looked at Patel, raising an eyebrow. Is it? She asked.
Yes,
continued Sarah, oblivious.
Apparently she used to represent defendants from deprived backgrounds who couldn't afford legal counsel. Although that description hardly fits Mr. Lloyd, I wondered if it would be worth asking her to take the case.
A poor man's lawyer, then, stated Baines. How did she afford a seat?
Her husband owns one of the last oil fields in South America, although they live in Seattle.
The priest looked uncomfortable once more.
I'm not in any position to pass judgment, but I think she chose to work as she did to compensate, at least in a small way, for her husband's corporate excesses.
Talking about judgment, Baines replied pointedly, in this impromptu courtroom of yours, who are you measuring up for that chair?
I thought the captain, maybe?
Sarah tailed off when she caught the commander's expression. Have you mentioned any of this to James? Baines asked cautiously.
Not yet. I thought you might.
Ooh, no, Baines cut her off. You can leave me out of that conversation, please. You think the captain will object, Jill? Asked Patel. I can only guess at his reaction, Satnam, because when you ask him, I'll be busy checking on something or other, quite possibly at the other end of the ship, I shouldn't wonder.
Well, who then?
Sarah inquired.
Surely James is the best man aboard for the job. He is the captain.
Baines nodded. I absolutely agree. I'm just not going to be the one to ask him. Do you think he will refuse? Asked Patel. The commander puffed out her cheeks. Let me tell you something about Captain James Douglas. He's a man of achievement, a true veteran. He rightly deserves his commission to captain the New World, but that's all he's ever wanted. He hates the idea of military in government. We've already pushed him into a role he never sought. He doesn't want power, which of course makes him ideal for the job, but he doesn't see it that way. He is a truly honorable man. Is James a leader? Definitely. Is he a ruler? Not so much. A judge? Never. He will really hate that if you force it on him. He agonizes about having too much power placed in his hands as it is. He'll blow a fuse if you try and make him a judge. Patel nodded his understanding. I think you're right about the captain, Jill. He is a good man. So who should do it then? Lloyd is military after all. What about you? Baines sat back like a giant spider had just landed on the table in front of her.
Me? Yes,
Sarah acknowledged slowly, mulling the idea over.
I think that the captain would completely endorse that choice, don't you, Satnam? You clearly have his trust, Commander, and ours. In fact, we all believe you to be a woman of honor, a true vet yourself, one might say. So why not?
Look, Baines backpedaled. Let's not jump to any conclusions here. I mean, we haven't actually asked James yet. Patel and Fellows laughed.
I think we can call that settled, then,
said Sarah. Baines slumped. I don't know anything about legal procedure, she said plaintively. Talk about a kangaroo court.
I don't know anything about economics,
replied Sarah with a tight smile.
We all have our little problems today, don't we?
All you will need to do is listen impartially to the learned counsel, added Patel reasonably. What about a jury? Asked Baines.
I'm sure we can choose 12 respectable, fair-minded individuals at random from the roster without too much difficulty,
replied Sarah. No, we can't, said Baines flatly. Have you forgotten that our crew is apparently liberally salted with hidden terrorists now?
Ah,
said the priest. Exactly. A vengeful light flickered in Baines' eyes. Fortunately, I have an idea which might cut through that problem, though. Go on, Satnam prompted guardedly. You three, Baines exclaimed triumphantly. A balanced perspective if ever I knew one. The scientist, the soldier, and the priest. Who could argue with that? Fellows and Patel looked at one another uncomfortably. Patel tried first. Well, as you say, the captain probably won't want to be asked. Oh, don't worry, Baines cut him off. I'll be happy to tell him what you've decided. Well, he tried again.
We,
seconded Sarah. So, I think we can call that settled then. Baines smiled unpleasantly, echoing Sarah's earlier assertion. After enjoying the moment, her smile turned to a frown. By the way, who are the learned counsel? You mentioned that Fraley woman. Who's the other?
Ah, I might have a little surprise for you there,
said Mother Sarah, a glint in her eye.
Do you remember a few moments ago you mentioned a kangaroo court?
Singh brought the shuttle through a wide turn into a steep-sided valley. The mountains, so massive from the New World, were vast almost beyond seeing up close. He couldn't help thinking that this brought them into scale with everything else in these parts. The video they were capturing would be epic and jaw-dropping, a real treat for the folks back on the ship. Huge herds of dinosaurs flocked and marched across the plains or skirted the forest edges. Stupendous waterfalls, thousands of feet high, separated into rainbows, coalesced and smashed into the rocks below. Brilliantly coloured flying reptiles whirled and glided all around them, some further across the wing than the 12-metre shuttle was long. The vistas were stunning, the snow-capped peaks breathtaking. The canopy below them could only be described as being like a blanket of crushed velvet. The similes, springing from nature's palette, could have picked every poet's pockets without spending a word. Each picture may be worth 1,000, but as the shuttle crew pondered the cost, their attention was very suddenly and very fully grabbed. "What is it, Lieutenant?" asked Douglas. The shuttle hovered above what appeared to be just another small, innocuous clearing. The computers continued scanning quietly in the background, freeing the crew to marvel at everything within their field of vision. They would have moved on, but a constant beeping from one of the sensors demanded attention. "That's the special search algorithm I programmed yesterday, sir," replied Singh, showing just a little concern. "As the second part of our mission is to look for a missing person," he said diplomatically, with a small sideways nod for emphasis, "I programmed the ship's sensors to look for anything which appeared man-made." Douglas was impressed. "Sandy, there's no one I'd rather be lost 100 million years ago with," he said. "Thank you, Captain," said Singh. "The feeling's mutual. Well, apart from that leggy brunette who works for Tim's mum, perhaps." A brilliant smile flashed across his dark face, and Tim's laughter rang from the back of the cabin. Douglas grinned too. "I'll try not to take it to heart. What have you found?" Singh looked completely bewildered. "It looks like tire tracks, sir." "Excellent. That'll be the bike she filched from our stores, he explained for the benefit of the other crew. No, sir, said Singh heavily. He turned to Douglas, looking thunderstruck. Okay, let's hear it, Douglas prompted, guardedly. You'd better see this. Singh routed the feed onto the main screen, and in a huddle, they viewed the unimaginable. Beck ambled through her private quarters to see who was at the door. The tiny screen showed a young man outside. Studying his features more closely, she caught her breath. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. "Hello, Miss Mawar?" His voice was projected through the small speaker set into the door console. "I wonder if I might ask a favor of you, please." Beck saw no reason to deny the young man. "Sure," she answered, opening the door and inviting him in. Once inside, with the hatch closed behind them, the young man approached her, offering his hand enthusiastically. "I'm Giorgio," he said. "Hi, Giorgio," she answered, slightly dazed. She knew that face. How was this possible? "Are you okay, miss? Is this a bad time?" No, I'm fine," she managed. "You just look a little familiar." "I dare say you've seen me about the ship. I'm one of the New World's engineers," he replied proudly. "No. Well, yeah, maybe." She offered Giorgio a seat, still holding a half-empty glass in her hand. When she turned around, she emptied the other half all over the carpet. Standing in front of her, smiling broadly, was a carbon copy of the man who was sitting behind her. "Whoa, are you sure you're okay, miss?" Giorgio got out of his seat to help her to pick up the glass. "Can I get something to clean it up, perhaps?" "It's okay, it's only water," she answered dreamily. "Your brother is here." This time Giorgio dropped the glass. They reached an unspoken decision to leave the receptacle where it was clearly destined to be, and fell back into opposing seats around Beck's coffee table. "You?" Giorgio hesitated. "You knew Mario?" "No, but I saw him once, the night we landed here." Giorgio opened and closed his mouth a few times, but to no avail. All he could do was stare. "Maybe we could use glasses with more than water in them," said Beck, getting to her feet. Moments later, she returned from the kitchen bearing a couple of brandies. Both men were still there, so she gave the drink to the one for whom it would do the most good. Giorgio tried again. "You came to see me about your brother," she said. It wasn't a question. "His name was Mario, did you say?" She felt a little more relaxed after the brandy stiffener. Giorgio merely nodded. "He's here, now," she admitted, glancing at the ethereal double of the man seated in front of her. "Do you have a message for Giorgio?" she asked the shade. The figure nodded and began to speak.
Dinosaur, written by Stephen Llewelyn and performed by Chris Barrie. New installments uploaded each week. Subscribe for more. Visit the link in the description for free New World companion stories, available for download as ebooks.